Make sure you guys hit the subscribe button if you guys are enjoying the content that we're throwing up. And make sure you guys hit the like button if you enjoy the video. And yeah, let's begin. Okay, so we are returning yet again to the Versus series, and in this part of the video, or at least this first part, we're covering Black Widow versus Magic. And in the second fight in this video, we'll cover Colossus versus Ben Grimm. So, having said that, this fight between Black Widow and Magic, and even the fight between, well, really it's Red Hulk and then Ben Grimm and then Unstoppable Colossus. And this all takes place in the blue area of the moon, right? So this is about issue number 5. This is again still the first half of the story, right? Like Avengers versus X-Men was 12 issues long. So all these versus fights take place within the first 6 issues. And I think the last one might take place at the very end. I'll have to double check to make sure. But this fight between Magic and Black Widow is kind of interesting here. And the reason why is because one of the things that Illyana Rasputin really says here is that for her, this is really more of a game. And the reason why is because if it was not a game, ultimately she would end up killing Black Widow. And that's true. Let's wind the clock back a little bit, right? Because we haven't really done a whole lot of discussion about Illyana, so we can't really just kind of run through the conversation and call it a day. We kind of have to have this talk, right? So Illyana Rasputin originally appeared, well, technically she appeared back in Giant Size X-Men number 1 in 1975. It wasn't until 1983 and 1984 that we got Magic Volume 1, and that was a 4-issue limited series. But what it was designed to do was basically explain the nature of her character insofar as why she has powers and why she's part of the whole demonic realm and all that kind of stuff. And so when Illyana Rasputin was 6 years old, she was basically tricked into traveling to the realm of Limbo. She was more or less taken there. Kitty Pryde and the X-Men tried to save her, but ultimately they were unsuccessful, and she was trapped there for some time with not really the leader of the demonic realm. Well, now that I think about it, I guess really Belasco is the leader of the demon realm. Like, he is kind of head of the demon realm. But ultimately he ended up basically grabbing Magic and then bringing her to the realm of Limbo and then basically keeping her there for quite some time. Now, the idea was that there were other members of the X-Men who were from other dimensions who were trapped there as well, right? So one thing to understand, if you go back and you read that 4-issue limited series, it's good, but it's also a little strange. So just kind of prepare yourself for a little bit of that strangeness there. But at the end of the day, Illyana Rasputin had learned to fight from a version of Kitty Pryde from a different dimension who was trapped in Limbo, as well as an alternate reality version of Storm who was trapped in Limbo as well. It ended up being that both of those characters basically ended up dying at the hands of Illyana, although she really kind of had to, you know, in terms of saving them from a fate worse than death, basically being experiments for like all of eternity. But the long and short of it is that she ended up escaping the realm of Limbo, and she was around 13 years old. And it was kind of Marvel's way of explaining, here's why she was 6 years old like 3 months ago, and here's why she's like 13 years old now, right? Because in the realm of Limbo, she continued to age, but essentially almost no time had passed at all in the time that she was trapped there and the time that she returned. Now, there are a couple things we'll also talk about here as we get through this, but the overall gist is that when it comes to the ability of these two characters to fight, Illyana Rasputin is no match for Natasha Romanoff. And the reason why is because Natasha Romanoff she was trained as part of the Red Room, right? So that was Russia's attempt to basically create kind of like their own Weapon X program, more or less, and they ended up creating the Red Room. The result of this is that she's a formidable fighter, right? She's one of the best fighters out there. This is compounded by the fact that I believe she was trained by Wolverine at one point in time and basically taught how to fight by him. Either that or she was taught by her father, who in turn was taught by Wolverine, but he was basically involved in her training in some capacity. She's one of the best fighters out there in Marvel, right? So that and all the various abilities, the fact that she kind of has a serum of sorts that gives her augmented strength, things along those lines. She's really head and shoulders above Illyana Rasputin in terms of bare bones fighting. And this is when Illyana Rasputin basically uses her stepping discs. Now, these stepping discs are and it's one of these things that Marvel just kind of throws out there, and I don't believe it was ever really clarified originally if they were part of her powers, but essentially she can create these discs. Now, the realm of Limbo is what she has to pass through, right? So it's like Nightcrawler, right? Nightcrawler wants to teleport from Westchester, New York, where the X-Men are, to Egypt, right? He has to pass through the Brimstone dimension and then to Egypt, right? He can't just jump from Westchester to Egypt. It doesn't really work that way. He doesn't teleport from one place to the next. With Illyana Rasputin, it's the same way. She passes through the Limbo dimension and then in turn ends up at her location. And it doesn't matter what it is. It could be at a different point in time. It could be at a different location on Earth or even beyond the Earth, right? Depending on who's writing the story. But these stepping discs are basically what are used. This is what you see when these hands seemingly come out of nowhere and try to pull Black Widow into them, right? Which they successfully do. The result of this is that it basically grabs Illyana Rasputin and the fight really kind of begins to manifest inside this Limbo realm. Now, there's kind of a difference here, right? When it comes to Limbo, there's true Limbo, then there's Magic's Limbo. Magic's Limbo is kind of like an ancillary version of Limbo, a kind of realm that she can control unto herself, right? True limbo is essentially where they seem to be, in the sense that the entire location is not bending itself to her whim. But magic, for the most part, isn't really a friend of the people in limbo, right? Like, these demon entities are constantly on the prowl to try to kill whoever it is that they come across. And Black Widow immediately lets loose, right? All these weapons and guns, different things like that, starts shooting everything up, and ultimately tells Ileana, get us out of here, like, get us out of this realm of limbo, or I will kill you here and you will die with me in this godforsaken place. Now, of course, if for no other reason than for self-preservation, Ileana Rasputin gets them out of there, right? She teleports them out. And then from there, this fight kind of continues with Ileana summoning the Soul Sword. Now, the Soul Sword is an extension of Ileana's life force, right? So she basically channels her life force into the sword. Now, when it first appeared, again, referencing, we're really Uncanny X-Men number 160 and this Magic Volume 1 miniseries, the Soul Sword, when it first manifested, was just a general sword. But as Ileana Rasputin began to use it more and more, it began to kind of alter and take a form that was really more conducive to how she envisioned it, right? So literally, the sword grew as she did, as she used it more and more often. That's why, like, over the course of time in Marvel Comics, you'll probably see this sword begin to change form over time, because it's a reflection of magic's life force. But the long and short of this is that the Soul Sword is essentially deadly to anybody who's a magic wielder, but can also knock individuals who are non-magic wielders unconscious. And that's exactly what happens to Black Widow. She's basically impaled by the sword of magic, and then in turn, she's just kind of left and knocked out, right? Now, again, that's really the only way that Ileana Rasputin probably could have won this fight, to be honest, because she's just not as good of a fighter as Black Widow is. She's just not on that same level. It just doesn't really work that way. So what we end up doing here is we jump to the fight between Red Hulk, Colossus, and the Thing. Now, if we're being honest with ourselves, the fight between Red Hulk and Colossus kind of continues on from Uncanny X-Men issue number 11, but in truth, that fight really ended more with Colossus giving the win to Red Hulk. And the reason why was because that fight took place underwater, basically at the base of the mutant city of Utopia. And the result was that in the middle, as their fight began to kind of rage, basically, Colossus gave in to the power of Sidorak insofar as he became his kind of demonic form. The issue with that is he was fighting with this almost uncontrollable rage, right? And it was more than enough to overpower the Red Hulk. And the problem was that in the process, he had damaged the pillar that was supporting Utopia, or at least one of them, and the entire nation would have come crashing down. And so it was one of these things where he just kind of left himself open to the Red Hulk. The Red Hulk understood what was going on and just started pummeling Colossus, right? Just started absolutely thrashing him. So that was kind of a defeat, but not really. What this gives us is a straight up knockdown brawl between the two, and it's very short-lived, right? And it's kind of interesting because in this fight, it all takes place on one page between Red Hulk and Unstoppable Colossus. And literally the two of them are just kind of like fighting, like bare knuckle fighting, just like ripping each other apart. And the funny thing about it is that Red Hulk kind of gets the upper hand and says, I'm tired of fighting with you, grabs Unstoppable Colossus and basically just like throws him, just like sends him flying into a pillar where he comes across Ben Grimm the Thing. And so in this little skirmish here, I would give the win to Red Hulk, right? Because it's not as though Colossus was holding back. It's not like it was in Uncanny X-Men number 11 when he was like, I don't want to keep losing control, so just knock me out now so I don't have to worry about destroying the pillar that supports Utopia. It wasn't anything like that. It was literally the two of them fighting seemingly to the best of their abilities, and Red Hulk getting the upper hand and just kind of throwing him away and having him come face to face with Ben Grimm. Now, this fight goes exactly as you would expect, right? Ben Grimm is no match for the Unstoppable Colossus, and very, very few people are. With this whole thing with Ben Grimm, this fight takes place in a matter of seconds, I would say, probably in the span of like maybe a minute and a half, 2 minutes. And the reason for that is because Ben Grimm's pulling out all the stops, right? And he kind of has these funny moments, where he's like, let me make your bed for you, let me fluff your pillows. And he's just like punching, just pummeling Unstoppable Colossus as best he can. But at the end of the day, Ben Grimm just doesn't have much to offer. He can put a pummeling on Unstoppable Colossus, but it's one thing to be able to punch a guy. It's different to be able to knock him out. And that's really what goes on here, right? In terms of Unstoppable Colossus getting the win, the way this plays out, he doesn't really beat Grimm within an inch of his life or anything along those lines. He actually plays it smart, right? Because this versus battle is kind of in the midst of everything going on. So it's one of these scenarios where both the Red Hulk, Unstoppable Colossus, and even Ben Grimm himself are like, we don't have time for this, right? We got bigger things going on. If you really want to fight, that's fine. Let's end this thing, right? So Ben Grimm throws a brick in the mouth of Unstoppable Colossus, kind of makes him choke for a minute, and then goes charging at him. And then immediately Unstoppable Colossus, because of the fact that, he can't really be moved, because he's got the power of the Juggernaut, in turn, he grabs Ben Grimm and just races him out outside of the blue area of the moon, and then basically leaves him there where there's no real oxygen, and Ben Grimm basically passes out. He's kind of in a weakened state. He gets pummeled on by Colossus, and then basically he's just kind of knocked out, and that's essentially it, right? So it's really more due to the circumstances that Ben Grimm is knocked out, more so than Unstoppable Colossus getting the upper hand on on him. Now, to those people who are going to ask the question, how are they fighting on the moon? On Earth's moon in Marvel Comics, you have what's called the blue area. And the blue area is a portion of the moon where there's oxygen. That's actually where the Watcher resides. Uatu the Watcher, before he was killed by Nick Fury, that's where he resided at, right? That's where his citadel and his base of operations was. That's where everybody is right now in Avengers versus X-Men. It's been there for quite some time, and that's why they're able to fight here. But in reality, I would again say that if this fight continued on for any real measure of time, Unstoppable Colossus would have gotten the upper hand anyway, right? He would have taken out Ben Grimm, even if it wasn't for these circumstances. So I think we can all kind of agree with that. Ben Grimm's strong, but he ain't strong enough to be able to defeat Colossus with the combined power of the Juggernaut. Just doesn't work that way. With that being said, guys, we're gonna bring this video to an end. If you are new here to Comics Explained, make sure you guys hit the sub button to become part of the Rob Corps. If you guys enjoyed this video, make sure you drop a like, and I will catch you all later. Peace.